Welcome to another episode of the Coach Up Podcast Extension. I'm very excited to talk today with Mr. Brian Matthews. Actually, there's some letters that go in front of that, but I'll let him tell you about that because of his wonderful service that he provides to our country. Nonetheless, we are talking today about imposter syndrome, leadership, filling the gaps in the midst of that. And so tune in because this is going to be an interesting conversation from someone who has a unique perspective of where they're coming from, what they have seen a gap in, and where they want to go, and how they're doing that through a coaching business. So, Brian, welcome. Please tell people who you are and what you do.
Wow, thank you. That was a great introduction. I appreciate you having me. So I'll start with the first part of me. First part of my job is I am a CW5, Chief Warrant Officer 5 in the United States Army. My title now is Chief Warrant Officer of the branch. Don't worry about that. But that's currently, I've been in the Army 26 years, focused on the cyber community. My next part of my life or part of my job is that I'm a coach. I have a business called Unlit Leadership, and that business focuses on cultural minorities, really helping them balance authenticity and success. And that covers a gambit of things, everything from imposter syndrome to building presence to communications to all of those things. So those are that's my day and night job. And, Batman at one time and Bruce Wayne on the other. So that's me in a nutshell.
First of all, thank you for your service to our country. Oh my goodness. We know that freedom is not free, and so very much appreciate that. Second of all, what is cultural, what did you call it?
Minority.
What is
Cultural
that?
minority. So cultural minorities, and I'm specifically focused on cultural minorities within organizations. So you move up the chain, you look to your left and right, and you're the only person that looks like you, that has the same background as you. So that's not just African Americans, not just Hispanics, not just, it could be anything. You look to your left and right and you are the cultural minority because you're not the majority within your organization. And there are certain, I think, aspects that you have to adjust to being the cultural minority within an organization.
So what attracted me to your LinkedIn profile, which is where we met, is the fact that you talk about imposter syndrome. And when you talk about cultural minorities, I think that imposter syndrome could very easily set in because if you look to your left and your right and you're the only person that looks like you, that those feelings of, do I really belong? Do I have what it takes? Am I able to fit into this environment? Do I have something to contribute? Could set in. Is that the reality of what you have found? And if so, how do we walk through that?
Yeah. Ooh, yes, I have. But I will say this is not only an issue that cultural minorities run into. I just think we have a very unique perspective on it because we've moved up the ranks. We're in whatever type of organization we are. We're no longer an individual contributor. We're now leading folks. We're looking to the left and the right, and we're like, hold on. First, I think this happens with everybody. You're like, hey, am I supposed to be here? How did I get here? And you start to question that. I think everybody does. But I think specifically when now you've moved up and no one looks like you, you're like, hey, what's going on here? Did they pick the right person? Yeah. So I think that's something that's very unique to us. In the book, the first chapter of my book, I talk about that. I mentioned a person, George, one of my first clients that I had, and this individual was a senior executive in a tech company, but he was the only African American male in that in that leadership. And despite all the accolades he had, he was still questioning whether he belonged there. And his resume was this long. So yes, I think we have a unique, a unique challenge in those situations. But I think I have a couple tips to help people, get past that.
Yeah. Let's start with the first one.
Oh, sure. So in the book, I talk about how to recognize what you've brought to the table. I think, and I focus a lot specifically in this book on high performers. And I say, hey, listen, high performers, we normally have our head down. So we're performing. We're trying to make sure that we get to the next goal. We're trying to make sure we do the next accomplishment. And what we don't do is we don't take time to step back and say, man, look at all this, look at what I brought all the way here. I think that's one. And that's going to be hard to do. But I talk about a couple of things. In the book, I do it's a part journal. It's a part exercise workbook. It's a part storytelling book. So it has all of these things in here. And I put in self-reflection pieces where there's in one of the chapters, I actually have where you will build out basically I love me book, a love me chart over time when you say, hey, how did I really get here? I'm the project manager of this company. I mean, in this company or in this organization, how did I get to be the head project manager? What did I have? Oh, I got an MBA in project management. Oh, that's a check. Oh, I led a successful team doing this. That's a check. And when you look back, you start to say, wow, I'm doing pretty good, right? That's one. And then another one is oftentimes I'm going to tell you, this is one that I thought was a lot of, woo-woo. And it's self-talk. I heard it. My wife is a marriage and family therapist, and she talks to individuals about positive affirmations, and I was like, that doesn't work. That's that woo stuff, right? That's not practical stuff, right? Just telling yourself that you're doing good is not going to make you feel better. I was wrong, being able to stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself, hey, yeah, I am here because I deserve it. I have done these things. And having that practical piece for me helped me, being able to look at my chart. I call it, in the Army, we call it I love me book. But in this book, in the book, I talk about a chart where you really chart out your time and you look and you're like, okay, I am good. I am successful. I am the right person for this job. And it works. So those are just a couple. You got to get the book for the rest, but that's just a couple.
You've mentioned this book, Brian, but you didn't share what book you're talking about.
I did.
What are you talking about?
Yes, yes. So I released a book a couple weeks ago. I think November 27th, few weeks ago.
Correct.
Yeah, and it deals with imposter syndrome, and it's called Mastering the Inner Game, which really focuses on you got to conquer yourself before you can really get out there and be the best version, right? And once again, in the past, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have been like, all of that is woo stuff, that conquering yourself and just get out there and do hard work and you're going to be fine, right?
Right.
But that's not the case. There are some things that really take you to the next level if you're able to get past your own self. We're sometimes our own, challenge. And I talk about that. And what's crazy is that wasn't the title of the book. The title of the book was originally something like Leading Through Doubt. And then I got the book cover made, and someone sent me this book cover, and they had this thing on like dartboard on the cover of the book. It has like a dart where you throw an arrow. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is this? This has nothing to do with leading. And that's how it came to me. I was like, oh, that looks like a game. Why would I do that, right? Then I started thinking, and I was like, I think I could work with that because I really like the cover, but the title didn't go with the cover. And I went with Mastering, the Inner Game, and
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to come back to this question. So if I forget it, okay, hopefully you'll remember it, because I want to give a couple of thoughts on what you shared. But you said 10 years ago, Brian, that you thought all this stuff that you now have written about, obviously used, was woo-woo stuff. Yes. So my question is, and I'll have you answer it in a moment, what happened to you that you learned it wasn't woo-woo stuff and actually works? But before you answer that, you mentioned in the 2 tips, I love that you mentioned about how to overcome imposter syndrome, because one, you talk about the love yourself. Is it letter or love yourself plan? What did you call it? Love yourself.
I call this a love me book, right?
Love me book.
Yes, right. In the Army, we keep all of our awards and all of the things that we've done great in this book, and we call me I love me book.
The love me book. Love that. So perfect because I had another coach that I was talking to, and she said, I dare you. She might not have said dare. She probably said something nicer like challenge, but I'm saying to you guys, I dare you to write down 20 things that you are proud of that you have done over just the last 4 months. And we were specifically talking about women because so often women, but people, women and men, just don't think about the
There
good
you
things
go.
we've done and even small things, right? And so I had my best friend and I challenged us to do this. And literally, she came back to the exercise and I had problems with it. Just writing down 20 things that over the last 4 months we were proud of. And it can be anything, but it's such a powerful exercise to go through and affirm, as you said, what have I done that I'm proud of? What have I done that makes me realize that I'm not an imposter. I truly do have value. I truly do have things to contribute. I truly have done great things. So I love that. And then the other thing you said about self-talk, your wise wife. Yes. Um, I was just having a conversation today. And one thing that I talk about doing, and I encourage people to do when I speak about how do we forge through fear, is record your affirmations, so your self-talk,
Mhm.
record them on your cell phone and play them while you're driving. And I
Oh,
know all y'all are going to think that is crazy. I don't want to hear my own voice. It's just too much. But what we hear and what we intake is what our brain will process.
yes.
And so it's not, I would say we need to do more than just writing them down and saying them in the morning off the sticky notes that are on the mirror in the bathroom. Do more. Record them, play them in your car, wash your mind in them. And to your point, it will work. The dust stuff does work. So what, Brian, happened to you
Mm,
that 10
mm.
years ago you thought this stuff was woo-woo and now you're
Yeah.
teaching it?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So this is what happened 10 years ago. I became a leader. I mean, I was a leader already in the military, but I moved up the ranks, really, really high up the ranks. And I was doing things and I had teams and people depended on me and I was doing big things, right? And I was like, wow, even though I was in that position, I was still like people in the book I talk about, I was doubting. I was like, man, why did you pick me as the guy that chooses this next team? Why are you sending me out here to evaluate these people? And it was starting to kind of get to me. And to be very honest, someone pulled me aside doing a evaluation and said, hey, you're doing great work, but you don't seem like you're checking it. You're checking for this great work. What's going on? And it made me think. And I noticed a couple of things. This is really was the start of Unlit Leadership for me. I had kind of withdrawn, and this is where I focus on cultural minorities. I had moved up, and none of the friends that I started in the military with, at that time, I'd been in the military maybe 16, 17 years. Um, they were gone. There was no one to and now leadership can be lonely when you get high up. And now I'm looking like, oh, should I be here? No one to really encourage that I know that I was comfortable with. So it made me start to look at other strategies to kind of honestly feel better, right? Focus better, be a better leader, and do all that. And really, I started reading. I started looking at things. I started looking out for coaches. Like maybe I should look at this coach thing, right? Uh, and that's what got me started.
I'm surprised there were no mentors in the military for
So
this.
I'm glad you said that because that's another reason why I started to focus on cultural minorities. There were, but they were different. So I'll give a great example. I am a Chief Warrant Officer 5 in the United States Army. CW5s in the military at large can only be 5% of the entire military. That's the rule. CW5s can only be 3.4% of those 5%. So so I mean, you look at that point, me making CW5, I am 2 of 10 that's African American, right? So we are, which is a really good percentage compared to some of the others. So We're pretty small. So I was in an environment, and don't get me wrong, I had some really great mentors who helped me, but they were sympathetic but couldn't be empathetic just because we didn't have the similar backgrounds.
Yeah. What you're saying, I literally, so I give this honor and credit to God because it wasn't me. I literally had this epiphany. It was either yesterday or this morning. And you hear, Brian, people say exactly what you're saying. I didn't know that I could do this until I saw somebody who looked like me doing it.
Yeah.
I think I used to dance when I was a child. And so I love ballet, I love tap, I love jazz. And I will hear ballerinas and dancers now say, until I saw a Black ballerina, I didn't know that we could belong on that stage, or anything, right? And so in your case, in the military, it's such a high level, right? There's nobody who looks like me. And I didn't realize until this morning what an impact that has psychologically. Just because it's just for me, it's not, I've never recognized that for myself as needing that. Maybe I did and I just didn't recognize it. But this morning or yesterday, it hit me and it made me realize how important it is that every one of us step into the space of sharing our story. Because if we've done something, then we are for someone else that person that they can see themselves in. If they're looking to be a coach on leadership and bridging that gap and being a mentor for individuals at a high level, they can now look at you and say, oh, Brian is doing that. Okay, there's a space for me too. Or he's paved the way, or a podcaster. Oh, Kanisha's doing that. So it's important because everybody doesn't connect with everybody. Everybody doesn't find everybody. But if we don't make ourselves available, then the people who will find us never will and may never get that exposure. So it's so great that you saw a need and now you're stepping into the space of providing that need for others. But I'm curious still. You mentioned, okay, you recognized the gap 10 years ago, you were moving into leadership, but you still haven't told me, Brian, where the change and the shift came that you started recognizing that self-talk does work, that you started utilizing some of these techniques. Who introduced you to them? Did something happen that you started using them? That's what I'm curious about.
Okay. Yeah. So I have to I have to give credit to my wife, right? So my wife was also in the military. She retired from the military. We're a military family. I have 3 kids in the military. Um, she was going through her psychology degree. She decided to leave the military and go totally different direction. She was in military intelligence. It's like, when I get out, I don't want to touch that. And she decided to go into the space, like I said, of marriage and family therapy and really focus on helping a similar geographic focus, right? It was like, hey, I want to focus on, I'm demographic, I'm not geographic, demographic, where she really wanted to focus on cultural minorities and issues that we have. And a lot with men, she was saying, hey, there's a stigma, and there is, of getting help from psychologists and counselors when it comes to us going and getting that help. And I was a test bed as she was going through training. Hey, you should do this, and I'm seeing you're a little stressed here. Hey, this new technique I learned, maybe you should try this. And I was that's it is so funny because we're such different personality types that I am a straight, hey, this policy, this book, this process, if it's not written down like this is just, like I said, woo stuff, right? And and she started giving me some of these things to try, like the affirmations. She said, hey, maybe you should start really saying the things that are good. And she would catch me. I would say things like, I don't know why I was chosen for this. I'm not even the guy for this, right? And she'd be like, well, why would you say that? And then she, obviously we've been together 25 years. She would go and say, hey, you did this, this, and this. Yeah, you were chosen because you're the right person, not because you're a diversity hire, not because you're the only one, because you meet the requirements. And it started slowly, just started clicking. And I will not, people that say stuff happens overnight, it does not. It took, I still have to catch myself, but she almost trained me without me knowing I was being trained, because I'll catch myself when I'm with her, like, I'm not gonna say that because now I gotta hear this whole, you know.
That's good accountability. That is
Yes, it
good
is.
accountability.
It is. So that was one. And then the other one that really changed me was I realized you mentioned something earlier that we step into the gap because other people look. I started seeing the next generation. I was getting up in rank, and there were other people that wanted to follow me. And I was like, how can I show them the right way? And I really started seeing that because I say this and I'm sure this is in corporate America as well as the military. You have patrons. You have people that kind of pull you along, and that's my and they, hey, you should be in this meeting. Hey, I want to introduce you to this guy. And I was noticing that, there were people that did that for me. And it was my time now that I was moving up instead of wallowing and I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm here. Let me use this to help that next generation. And they were looking at me, even though I wasn't, my wife calls me the reluctant leader. She was like, you did not want to step into this, but people are calling you and they're asking you for help. You got to do that. So I'm one of those people that believe in responsibility, and I'm not going to ask for it, but if I have it, I will jump on it and do it. And I think that was a big shift when there was others starting to come in, and I was like, oh, I can now help this next generation get here. Let me get out of my own feelings and
Yeah.
yeah,
And you're balancing a unique dichotomy because as a coach with your own coaching business, you're doing that for individuals outside of the military, but as you're in the military, you are doing that for those who are part of that area of your world. And so patron is an interesting word. I hadn't heard that. So, so it's good to know a little bit of the military lingo. In the in the corporate world, we call that a sponsor. So in corporate world, there's three terms that I learned. You have your mentor, you have your coach, and then you have your sponsor. Um,
yep,
Mentor being somebody who you don't pay,
yep,
and that's somebody who is basically telling you what to do because they have more experience than you, and they're giving you guidance because you need it. Coach is more the reflective, ask you questions, help you sort through it on your own. And then a sponsor is exactly what you're talking about. They're saying your name in the rooms where you aren't. They're inviting you to the meetings. They're pulling you into the introductions of people that without them you would not have, that allows you to propel yourself up that ladder a little more quickly. And so thank you for sharing a little bit of y'all's lingo. I always think it's like a
we got
secret.
mentoring coach too. We just don't pay for coaches because we're in the
Mm-hmm.
military. So and we actually do. We started the Army at least about 5 years ago. Started sending people through ICF to get ACC certified. We were starting to coach leaders, especially those that would take command and things like that, which I thought was a great program. I don't know if that will continue on, but we definitely went down that path. And for us, mentors is usually someone you choose. So we go and like, hey, would you be a mentor to me? I get that all the time. Hey, would you mind being a mentor to me? And yes, you don't pay and it's not official, but they see where you are and they want to one day be there and you've been where they want to be. So
Yeah. So the interesting that I'm excited to hear the military is investing in coaching. That's
yes.
amazing. I want to pivot to your business building as a coach. So, guys on here, we talk about how do you build your business as a coach. And Ryan, you're new. You're a newer coach, new
I know.
business owner,
Yes.
right? And so
Yep.
you're in that great area of tension. I mean, entrepreneurship is constant tension, I think, but you're in that new area where you're building, you're growing. And so first I'm curious and want to talk about when you started, what were you most excited about doing in your business? And then I want to know what were you most challenged with? But we'll start with what were you most excited about?
Okay. Most excited. I was most excited about getting to the people that I thought I could help. Right. So I'll tell you what really motivated me to jump into the coaching arena. I had an individual, a major. We were talking, and he's like, "Hey, Chief, coaching." I was going through a coaching certification program, and he was like, "Coaching is a complete waste of time, Chief. I mean, it's cool that you're trying to do that, but I think it's a complete waste of time." And we were talking about the Army going the route, and he was like, "Hey, I don't think the Army should do this because what is the coach going to tell me if they don't have the same experiences I have?" And he was very adamant about it. Like, hey, I was an 82nd Airborne jumping out of airplanes. If they haven't jumped out of airplanes, what are we going to talk about? So it what I was excited about was that I know I brought experiences to the table based on my target, based on those I wanted to help. I was like, hey, cultural minorities that often don't have direct authority. So they have to really uh, maneuver within their organizations based off of influence. So you look at your mid-level person that's no longer an individual contributor, but they're not really have direct reports, but they're still responsible for providing that piece. Look at program managers, project managers, folks like that. And I felt that I could speak to them directly because I was speaking like, hey, I've been that guy, and no, I've done it in the military. I understand the challenges you face. I was a cultural minority. I was the only one. I mean, even in my organization now, 5 levels up, I'm the, only one. So um, I was excited. I was like, I'm going to get to talk to my folks. Um, and but then the trepidation came in. I'm also going to get to talk to my folks. So I was, it was. I knew how I knew how I was, right. I'm
Mhm.
a product of the military. So even when I was going through my coaching program, I was second coaching program. So I got my coaching certification. Then I went and got certified as an everything disc facilitator because I felt I needed a validated assessment that I could use to help provide some validity. When I was going through the process, you have to coach others and train and all this. And halfway through, I got my review back from the people I was coaching, and they said, "Hey, we don't know what you do or what you've done because we didn't really give our backgrounds, but it sounds like you were in the military." And I was like, "What? How?" And it was like, "Yeah, you're very, very direct, very, you know." So I was worried because I am very, and I was telling my wife through this whole process, I was like, the only thing I'm going to be worried about is when I give people. I didn't know yet that that's not what I was going to do, but I thought at the time I'm going to give you a solution. I'm a fixer. That's what I do in the military. I'm going to give you the solution, and I want you to go fix yourself, and then we're good. You're going to pay me, and everything's going to be great. It didn't go like
It doesn't,
that.
that's not exactly coaching. That's not
Right, exactly, right? And I learned that. It was like, oh, I thought I was just going to fix people, right? They're going to tell me a problem, tell them how to solve it. And it's like, no, that's not really what coaching is. So because I went in thinking that's what it was, and then I learned that's what it wasn't, I was like, man, maybe I'm not prepared to really coach people because I'm going to feel a certain kind of way when I'm trying to lead you to what I think is the right solution, and you're going down a different path. I'm going to be like,
right.
hey, no, no, no. I tried this thing. That's wrong. This is where you need to go. I didn't do that, but that was my worry.
And a legitimate one. So you had to come over and
I
learn
did. I
that
did.
it's a reflective conversation. It is a
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a guidance of
It is again.
helping them guide themselves to where,
Yes.
but very rewarding. Very rewarding.
Yes. Yes. Very rewarding. Yes.
Okay. So now what did you find? So you got two certifications, your coaching and then the DISC. And for those of you all who are curious what DISC is, it is a personality assessment, correct? That
Yeah.
breaks down personalities into four main categories. Yeah, I
There you
basically
go.
summed it up. Okay.
Yep.
So as you're now building this
Mhm.
business, you've gotten your certifications. Brian, what was the challenge, the biggest challenge that you remember in starting your business that was the most frustrating for you? It may still
Um,
be, but
and it still is, and
okay.
it's clients. No ifs, ands, buts. It's getting clients, and not just any clients. One, getting clients that fit my market. So I started off really broad, and all the stuff, all the mistakes that I went and got my MBA for, and all this great stuff I did. Even though I had all the great training to tell you not to do this, I did it. Like, and I was like, I don't want to exclude anyone. I don't want to be that guy where you think you can't come to me, right? But then I made it too broad. Then I was like, I don't want to make my prices too high. Then I don't get people, Then I started getting people who were like, hey, well, hey, can I get it for free? So then it started going, I was like, okay, man, I'm struggling here to really find the right mix. So I say my first challenge was defining my niche. like I think when we first taught you was like, hey, who do you, you know, what's your target market? And I was
Yep.
able to say that, but that's taken me 3 years to say that. Had you asked me 2 years ago, I probably would not have been that clear. So that was hard finding my niche, and then getting clients that match that niche because I was getting clients because I'm in the military, so it was hard. You mentioned that balance. The majority of people that's on my LinkedIn, more than half, are because of military stuff. They're like, oh, this guy is the chief warrant officer of the cyber branch. So people, you know how you get a
Yep.
network and it says, hey, yeah, and soon as you get that network, someone sends you an ad saying, hey, I saw that you work at the Cyber Center of Excellence. Let me get you
Mhm.
some cyber stuff that you would really like. So that that was probably my next challenge. Really, like, okay, I actually went through like my LinkedIn and was like, this doesn't match where I'm going, and that's a hard thing because you want to get people believe they should have 10, 100,000 followers. But I think we may have talked about this. If you have 2 or 3 thousand followers that really are in your that's what you need. You don't need 100,000. I mean, people will comment on stuff, and if more than 50 people comment on something, it takes me 4 days to get back to all of the people. So
Correct.
yeah, so
Yes.
yeah,
Those are two very common, right? And so this is why, one, thank you for sharing, Brian, and wanted you guys to hear. These are common things that happen in building any business and especially coaching business. And two things that you said. One, you went through and removed some of your LinkedIn connections. Let
yeah,
me encourage you guys to do that because I read this, Brian, I read this on LinkedIn in the last week or so, and it made a lot of sense. Think about your connections as if you were going to speak in a room. So if you were going to be the keynote speaker or the main speaker at a conference or a workshop, and you had 3,000 people in the room, would you prefer that those 3,000 people be random people who may or may not be interested in what you're doing? Or would you prefer that those 3,000 people all be your ideal customer whom you can help and who you're targeting to help because your expertise matches what they need? Obviously,
yes,
we would
yeah,
want it to be, right? The 3,000 that are ideal customers. And if you think about that, like most of us don't have the capacity to reach out and talk to 3,000 individual people in the next 5 months. So narrowing down the people on your LinkedIn who are actually people who are who you're trying to serve is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. You will still have plenty
yes.
to become potential clients. So I love that you said that. You also said another thing, and this is why I write stuff down because now I've forgotten. Oh, you're talking about clients in your niche. Okay. So now, Brian, if I ask you, took
Yeah,
you 3 years to get that, guys, let hear that that is okay to renegotiate, revamp, reinvent, all that to get to your right niche. Like there's not a timeline. You don't have to have it in 7 days, it's 72 hours. If you don't get it right, like your business
yeah,
is not going to fail, right?
yes.
3 years in, and it still may evolve for you. But right now, if I had to ask you, and you said it at the beginning, but if I had to ask you, who's your target market? Brian, who's your target market now?
I would say cultural minorities, who high performing cultural minorities, right? That are uh, in organizations where they have to lead through influence, not necessarily through direct authority. Um, the Yeah, and they're challenged with things like imposter syndrome. Now they got a seat at the table. How do they, what do they do with that seat now that they're there? Presence, communications, all those things that you have to worry about when you move from being an individual contributor to now being a person responsible for things without direct authority.
And see, now you say that, and I know exactly who you're talking about,
Yeah,
right? And that's
yeah,
how you build a business. The people that you want to do business with and who you serve need to know you're talking about them. In your
yeah,
description, immediately I know exactly who you're talking about. Coming from the corporate world, I can think of all the project managers.
yes, yeah,
Absolutely. Even in my role before last, that was me. I was responsible for a relationship with a vendor. And while I am technically over you all and tell you all what we need as a company, I can't directly give you an order that you have to follow through with. I have to influence it,
Yes.
then expect to get the results. And so, excellent that you have taken the time to redefine that because it's so important as you're building your business, guys. Know who you're targeting so the people who you're targeting know that you are available for them. Okay.
Okay.
In essence and consideration of time, which always
Yes.
goes too quickly
Yes.
for me, I have a couple of last questions for you, Brian, to be very quick. And then I want you to tell people how they can reach you, work
Okay.
with you, find your book,
Okay.
all that good stuff. So I call this the quick fire round of questions.
Okay.
All right. So I have two for you. Number one, in your building of your coaching business, what is the number one tool or resource that you could not do business without right now?
My assessment. That probably was the best, to be honest, it was the best thing. It is the foundation for me to have a good understanding of where you are and help you kind of become self-aware so we have a good starting point on even ground.
And you're talking about the disc assessment you do for your
Everything
client.
this assessment. Yeah, it's for every single one of my coaching packages, it is included. So
Okay, excellent. And then my second question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave from your business?
oh wow, that's great. That's a hard one. I gotta think about that one. Um, the legacy I want to leave from my business, and it's not, I want to be clear, it's not about me per se, is that people were able to come to my business and leave knowing that they were enough. And I know that sounds like cheesy, but it, you know, most of the people that I dealt with don't understand they don't know how to harness their own power, their own confidence, their own. So I would like to leave with people understanding that when they came to me or they came to the business, they left truly understanding what they have and confident in what they bring to the table. So that would be mine.
You made such a good call out. You said it sounds cheesy, and that's because unfortunately,
Oh,
we in society have used some words so much
so much. Yes.
that, right, like it
Yeah.
has become cheesy, but
Yes.
it's not. It is exactly
Yeah.
as you said, right? Because when you are able to help the clients that you help feel their own potential, their own worth, their value, understand that, then it has such a ripple effect, right? The work that you do impacts your clients, which impacts not only the people that they work with, but it impacts the people at their home and it impacts the people in their community because
Yes.
they are different. We carry ourselves differently. We speak, even as you were talking about your wife catching you, now you
Yeah.
catch you, right? Your words are different. And when your children hear you speaking now in a particular way versus before, it
Yes.
impacts, right? It's not what's taught, it's what's caught. And so that work that you're doing to help people know that they're enough is powerful. And we got to do better as a society to stop using it's just
Yeah.
overusing stuff to
Yeah. Yeah.
make it seem cheesy. But it's
Yeah.
so powerful what you're doing, and that is an amazing legacy that needs to be left. Only thing that we do that really matters in this life is what we do for others, and
I
that's what you're
agree.
doing. Please tell people how they can connect with you, find you, work with you.
Oh, very nice. Well, I have a page, Unlit Leadership. If you remember Unlit Leadership, you will find me everywhere. But mainly I use LinkedIn. That is Brian D. Matthews, which is my name. So if you look up LinkedIn, you Brian D. Matthews, because when I started LinkedIn, I didn't have Unlit Leadership. Uh, I also have a webpage, which is unlitleadership.com, and you can find me there, all that information. I do use Facebook, but honestly, just to post pictures of the family. But I do have a business page there, Unlit Leadership. And now I'm looking at groups for podcasting because, someone helped me out. So yes, yes. But I have Facebook, which is Unlit Leadership. I have the page Unlit Leadership, and finally I have LinkedIn, which is Brian D. Matthews.
You guys reach out. Um, Organizations as well as individuals, correct? Who you work with?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. feel free to reach out to Brian. And Brian, thank you for being here today. I am very excited about what you are already bringing to the marketplace, the private sector, out of the military,
Yeah.
and how it's going to grow. And just looking forward to seeing your success as it continues to grow.